There is a pervading line of thought out there that has for a long time tried to connect the uniquely Judeo-Christian point of view and the distinctively American way of looking at the world. It kind of goes like this. The United States is the preeminent world power because God has ordained it to be. He sowed the seeds for this country from its very inception, and He has, through time, provided favorable conditions for its continued growth and expansion, and has ultimately placed us where we are on this precipice for the higher purpose of being a beacon to shine His message of freedom, liberty, and human rights all around the world. I think that's a pretty fair summation of it. But the thing is, that's really asking kind of a lot from you to just assume if you're a reasonable person. First, and probably the biggest thing, is you have to assume that God is actively interested and invested in the ongoing ebb and flow of human affairs. I don't necessarily think that that's a given, by the way. Because then, why wouldn't He have just made the whole planet like us? I mean, seriously, if He's looking to the U.S. to beam freedom, human rights, and, for lack of a better term, gentlemanly conduct around the planet, okay. But then, why would He have set up a planet that would be so thoroughly deficient in these areas that it would even need a United States or any other country to point the way to it in the first place? Well, I think that's a fair question. And you know, it's not as if we're the very first country to come up with this idea either. We're not. If you take a hard view of world history through the ages, there have been at least 6 or 7, I don't know, maybe even 8, depending on how you look at it, civilizations that have coalesced, grown, and risen to become the dominant world power at one time or another. Now, all of these served a different God, or at least different versions of God, yet in each case, each one claimed their higher power as at least a dominant factor in their overall program. When you look at it this way, that leaves us as just yet one more in a long line of civilizations to do this. And finally, my very starting point for this, the idea of U.S. preeminence in the world, that idea is itself subject to question. I think there's a pretty strong case right now to be made for China as the newly emerging dominant world power. Which leads me to wonder, gee, I wonder where they stand on the issue of human rights, liberty, freedom of individual expression, and these sorts of things. I don't know this for sure, but I tend to think that, I don't know, maybe they might not place the same value on these sorts of things that we do here in America. So, okay, fine. Let's suppose that they continue along their trajectory and knock us off to the side and they take over as dominant world power. Does that make our God any less real to us? It shouldn't. Because here's the thing. If you truly believe that the God you serve really is the ruler of this universe, you suddenly realize in that moment that He doesn't even need a United States or any other country to broadcast His message. His message is already out there for anybody who's paying attention. And conversely, if you truly believe that the United States is the greatest country ever in all of human civilization, as I do, then you can prove that all day long without ever having to drag God into the discussion at all. You could be the biggest atheist ever, and I could be the biggest Christian ever, and we could still stand next to one another in our support of this country. It's just that it's difficult to do that right now because the way everybody's tried to tie these two ideas together as if somehow they're dependent on one another. They're not. And that's the reason why that tie has to go. It separates people because it causes them to focus more on individual differences when really we should be looking to one another for mutual support on areas of shared interest. It may surprise you when you see how much you really do have in common with the person standing next to you. Less us and them, more you and me. That's what's needed right now. One nation under God? Absolutely. Just not the only one. I'll see you next time.